Okay, well, what the gentleman talking about is the nonprofit organization, research organization I founded after coming back from the moon. And the reason, a little background here, the reason with the epiphany that it was touched upon there was so profound for me that I realized that since we were the first generation of spacefarers from Earth, and that forever humans have been asking the questions, who are we, how do we get here, where are we going, what's this really all about? And we in science, we knew that our answers to it were incomplete, that we didn't really know an awful lot about what was out there. And that we realized that our cultural answers to who are we, how do we get here, where we're going, coming out of our various cultures, mostly out of our religions, was archaic and perhaps flawed also. And so as a burgeoning spacefaring civilization, we're the first generation. And I was particularly, I've been trained, of course, at Harvard and MIT in astronomy and these subject matters. I realized that perhaps we needed to start asking these questions all over again from a new point of view. And a little history here. If you go back to the end of the 17th century, and the great thinkers of that period, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and a particular member of the church, intelligentsia, René Descartes, wrote a paper at that period that said that body, mind, physicality, spirituality belonged to two different realms of reality that didn't interact. Now that served a very noble purpose at that point in time. It got the Inquisition of the period off the backs of the intellectuals. So they quit burning them at the stake for disagreeing with the church. However, it also caused as long as they didn't start talking about mind and consciousness and spiritual things. So what that caused to happen was that science arose at that point, at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, but it arose as strictly a materialist concept without any notion, as long as it stayed away from mind and consciousness, that they were safe, could get burned at the stake. But the problem is, we've gone all the way to the 20th century. At the end of the 19th century, Max Planck, a German scientist, along with Einstein and a few of the others at that point, Max Planck discovered black body radiation, which is the idea that all the matter in our bodies, of hairs, of skin, and everything else, is radiating energy away all the time. And that was picked up by Einstein because they were trying to solve the problem of what is the speed of light and how does it come through space. So this was the beginning of what in modern times we call quantum mechanics. And it was finally formalized by the 1920s, but it clearly showed that Descartes' dualism, that body, mind, physicality, spirituality don't interact, was wrong, just wrong. However, academic community for most of the 20th century has clung to Cartesian dualism, it's called, and refused to look at how mind and body interact. So my experience in space was, we got to do something about that. And I formed my Institute of Noetic Sciences to break down, forget the Cartesian dualism, let's figure out what consciousness is. And that's what noetics is all about. And we now realize from the studies we've done that our awareness and our consciousness is firmly rooted in the quantum world. Now, do we know all the answers? No, we don't. We've broken the code a little bit, but we haven't really pulled it all together yet. There's a lot of work to do. And I recently, a few years ago, started a new research foundation to take off from where noetics is working on the studies of consciousness to go into more the hard sciences, the physics and the biology, bringing a new concept called quantum holography, which demonstrates that Max Planck's black body radiation is coherent and carries information in a quantum way, which is powerful stuff. So that's what we do. Yes, sir.
I've got two questions for you. One, I'm just curious. When we talk about the other astronauts that they saw or didn't see anything, on Apollo 11, they saw something that they thought, they sent a cryptic message back to Houston, trying to figure out what something was that was floating outside there. Did they ever figure out what that was?
Yeah.
First question.
The best guess right now, it was the S4B final stage.
That was. My second question is, I know it's about a 25,000 mile an hour escape velocity to get yourself towards the moon, but that's a little bit fast once you get into the moon to get into an orbit. So how did you slow down? It took you 300 feet of fuel to get to that speed. How did you slow down to get into
Well,
orbit?
you've got a lot less weight when you get out there.
Yeah.
And we had enough fuel in the command module. As we went into lunar orbit, we turned around and we slowed it down so it would go into orbit. Now, we also remember that there's a point between the Earth and the Moon where the gravitational pulls become equal, and you go up and then you start to fall into the lunar orbit. You start to pick up speed again. You're slowing down all the time as you go out a little bit, but then as you get into the lunar orbit, you start to fall down into that gravitational well. So you turn around on the backside and point the rocket to where you're going, and watch, slow it down a little bit, and go right into the lunar orbit.
So what is about the speed of the lunar orbit?
Let's see, I haven't computed it so long in the feet per second, but an orbit around the Earth is 90 minutes. An orbit around the Moon is 2 hours. Okay, so, and it's a quarter the size of Earth. Figure it out as you work on it.
I'll start working on it.
I can sit down with a piece of paper and type it along.
I'm going to take just one more question I'm going to take, and then I think I want to cut it off.
Okay, good.
It's been great. I appreciate it.
Who gets the last question? Go ahead.
How do you address people who want to tell you that we never went to the moon?
Well, that's very simple. Do you think the Soviets would let us get away with that since we were embracing the Union of the Soviets? Not on your list.
I'm glad I allowed one more question. That is my pet peeve.